Hi, freaky friends. This is Margaret.
And this is Colleen.
And we're the Cousins Weird.
Weird.
You almost have to start early.
I know. There's such a delay there, but that's okay.
Yeah. And we're apart today because my husband's car's in the shop and it's just a lot of shit going on all week and this weekend. And, I started my research and then I had to change gears because I couldn't devote the time I wanted to do the topic I'm probably do it 2 weeks when it's my turn again. But yeah, I just couldn't, I kept getting distracted. I had a lot of appointments last week and when my kids are home, I can't concentrate on shit because it's every 5 minutes, mommy, mommy. Yeah. Okay. And then, I don't want to say, shh, I'm doing something. I'm trying to be a good parent and be like, okay, what do you need? So and it's one of those things when you're reading a book and you're taking notes. It's where did I leave off? I don't even my brain. I start reading and I don't remember this. You read,
I hate when that happens.
It's I'm turning back a few pages and rereading something I've already read 4 times. So I'm right. I gotta wait till I have a less busy week so I can work on this when the children are at school.
There you go.
Colleen's hungover.
A little hungover. I celebrated St. Patrick's Day yesterday hard. So I don't feel sick or anything. I'm just tired.
Yeah. I celebrated St. Patrick's Day yesterday too, but soft.
Not hard.
Definitely not. I'm a lightweight. I did have Irish on St. Patrick's Day. I had a client first thing, but after I went to my mom's house and had an Irish Irish coffee. I had whiskey and my coffee and it was delicious. And on St. Patrick's Day, it's okay to do that. And anytime you celebrate St. Patrick's Day, it's okay to do that.
Yeah, right.
And then yesterday I had one, but I put my mom has the actual Irish coffee, the little glass coffee cups.
Yeah.
So they're small. So I only put a half a shot of whiskey in that. St. Patrick's Day, I drank a shot and a half in mine because I didn't have to do anything. Yeah, I had an hour before the kid. I probably should have been doing my research, but damn it, I wanted whiskey in my coffee. And my sister was home this weekend, and we had a game day yesterday with Dave and Renee, and it was just it was fun. But I'm ready to not do anything today.
I know. Me too. I'm kind of glad.
But we did. I went up for breakfast. We had a big Irish breakfast at my mom's.
Oh, you did?
So yeah, I went up there and I ate breakfast. I actually helped cook it, but it's then we came back home and I'm it was nice because I'm okay, we have to go home because Daddy has to work and he needs the car. So the kids are but I don't want to leave. Well, we have to because Dad needs the car. So come on. But now they're with my dad. They went to do something at school with my dad for a little while. And I'm oh God, Colleen, let's take advantage of the peace and quiet. Okay. So what I'm talking about today, we're going to Guanajuato, Mexico.
Okay.
And from about 1865 to, actually, you know what? We're going to go a little further back than that. We're going to go back to about 1829.
Okay.
The world was in the middle of a cholera pandemic. And it was at this point, this was the second cholera pandemic to hit the world. And it was also known as the Asiatic cholera pandemic. And it spanned from India across Western Asia to Europe, Great Britain, and then to the Americas. And it also was east into China and Japan. So this was literally across the world. Cholera was everywhere. It killed 100,000 people. And it hit Mexico too. Just a little bit about, this is not a cholera one. This podcast is not about cholera. I'm just giving you a little background as to what cholera is.
Gotcha.
The first cholera pandemic began in 1817 through 1824. And that happened, they think, somewhere near Calcutta in India. And it spread through Southeast Asia to the Middle East, Eastern Africa, and the Mediterranean coast. So that one wasn't quite as wide-spanning as the second pandemic, which hit all over the world. But this one was still pretty devastating. And they think that what happened was it kind of hit like the Philippine and Thailand area, or Sri Lanka. And it kind of was holding out there, and then it re-spread from there. Like 30 years later, it started back up. So
that's awful.
Yeah. Cholera is also referred to at the time as the Blue Death. And what cholera is caused by a bacteria called the Vibrio cholerae bacteria, and it's in the intestines, and it's usually ingested from unclean water. Think poopy water, because it spreads through poop. So this spore comes from your poop, and it's either in your water or in your food, and then you ingest it and it gets into your intestines. But
horrible.
Yeah, it comes from your poop. That's how it spread. So it's dirty.
Yeah.
It causes severe diarrhea and vomiting to the point of dehydration, where a person's skin will look bluish gray from loss of fluids. So it's not actually the bacteria that kills you. It's the fact that you can't keep fluids in your body that kills you. You die. This disease kills you through dehydration. So
horrible.
Yes. So we're going back to Guanajuato, and they got hit with the cholera pandemic in the 30s, and thousands of people died in Mexico from this. And they were, because of this pandemic, people were buried really quickly. Like, they just buried people a lot of times in mass graves. Some of them, more wealthy people, were put in, like, not catacombs. Tombs. Yeah, they're more like tombs above ground. But in Mexico, from 1865 to 1958, the town of Guanajuato, Mexico, this town required a grave tax.
Oh, God.
So if your relatives could not or didn't want to pay for this tax, after 3 years in a row of this tax not being paid, the loved one would be evicted from their place of burial. Yes. So they would, God. Yeah. So if you couldn't pay this tax, they'd go and take Granny out of her tomb and put her in like this mass catacomb. Like, they just like, okay, we're just going to throw her in this room with a bunch of other skeletons until you can afford to pay her back rent from her. Oh my God. Isn't that awful?
Is it a yearly tax? Is it a yearly thing?
It's a yearly tax. They had to pay this tax every year rent on their dead person. Yes, on their dead loved one.
Great.
So it's like, you don't have to, not only do you have to pay rent on your house, to pay rent on your grave. Horrible. It's awful. Yeah, so they would evict them from these above ground crypts that they were in. And because in Mexico it's extremely dry, it's not humid. I mean, they don't have a lot of rain. These corpses they were pulling out of their graves were mummified naturally. So they're finding all of these mummies. And a lot of this grave where they're in Guanajuato, most of the people buried in there died of cholera. So, like, a lot of these corpses, who knows, it could have reinfected people. Who knows? I don't know how long the cholera lives on a person. Dead body. No idea. But yeah, so these were mummified. And it really depended on how long they had been buried. And most of these corpses they were taking up had been from the cholera time. So we're talking, at this point, it'd been at least 30 years. So they were pretty dried out. Yeah.
Well, they were dehydrated when they died too, so they're like jerky.
Yeah, these evicted corpses or / mummies, they were kept in an ossuary, which is like a container or a room where the bones of these people were kept, and the mummies. And sometimes an ossuary would be under the cemetery, like underground. But this one I think was above ground in like its own little tomb thing. And they would basically wait there for their relatives to fork up their money to pay for their reburial. So not only do they have to pay them back, or they have to pay for them to be reburied.
Wow.
Because that's nice. This happened until 1958.
Wow.
1958. People still had to pay this tax, or your loved one's going to get jerked out of the ground. Yeah, isn't that awful? I can't imagine. Like,
no.
wow. Okay, so by 1894, the ossuary had enough mummies to recategorize itself as a museum. So at this point, there were 111 mummies in this ossuary. And after a while, like the people, like the janitors, or the people who were in charge of keeping the grounds around this ossuary, would take pesos from people who wanted to go and look at the mummies, because people knew that there were mummies in there, and they're like, I want to see them because it's like, mummies. Yeah, like, I want to go look at these mummified remains, because it was like in the 1800s, so it's like, oh my god, they didn't decompose. It's like this amazing thing that happened. So like these janitors were making money from people, like, oh yeah, I'll let you see them, but you got to give me something, so give me a few pesos and I'll let you walk through. So eventually the town realized what was going on. They're like, we should just turn this into a museum, because like Mexico has, like, they're kind of famous for their museums. Like even the little towns, they have tons of museums in them. They have a lot of art. It's pretty cool.
Very cool.
Except for the whole evicting your loved ones from their grave.
Not cool.
That's definitely not cool. No. So this in 1969, the Museo de las Momias de Guanajuato was opened officially. So we're talking, it was 1969. This became an official museum in Mexico. Funny side note, in 1970, a B movie was produced there called Santo versus the Mummies of Guanajuato, starring Rodolfo Guzman Huerta, a.k.a. the Mexican luchador El Santo.
El Santo,
the luchador. It was the star of this movie that they filmed at this place with the mummies, which is pretty cool. There was also another movie made in the 70s called Nosferatu. It wasn't the original black and white one, it was another one. And in the opening scene, they used pictures that they had shot footage of the mummies in this museum, and they used them in the movie.
Oh.
Some Spanish one.
Neat.
Yeah. So, one thing that I actually already sent you pictures and stuff from this museum, so to speak. And one thing that people noticed was a lot of the mummies look like they're screaming in agony. Like their mouths are open, their heads are tilted back. It looks like they were buried alive. So a lot of people, there was this huge rumor that was like, these people had cholera and they weren't all the way dead when they were buried.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so because of the looks of. But one thing that should be noted is that when a person dies and you put them in the ground and you don't tie their mouth shut or sew things shut, they're just going to fall open because the muscles don't do what they're supposed to do. So and then they start to dry and the things tighten. So it just changes how things look. The fact that most of the mummies who look like they're screaming in agony, their hands are still like lightly crossed over their body, shows you that they were not alive. Because they wouldn't have, their hands still wouldn't be the way that they are if that was true.
Right.
The first body that they disinterred from this, after this tax started, was a French doctor, Romihio Leroy. And I actually sent you a picture of this mummy. And it said he was buried in an elegant suit of clothing, and it was still mostly intact when they disinterred him. So he still has his fancy clothes on.
Oh, fancy.
There is one mummy, however. Her name was Ignacia Aguilar, and she was said to have had a heart condition where her heartbeat would slow to the point where she would slip into a coma and appear dead.
Oh.
And during one of these spells, her family thought she had actually died. And like years later, decades later, probably like 50 years later, when she eventually